I had been meaning to talk about this for the last couple of days, and then with what happened today at the White House with President Trump, President Zelensky of Ukraine, and Vice President uh, Vance, definitely needs to be talked about. Right now, Ukraine is being invaded by Russia, and it has been for the last 2 years. Oh, no, 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 no. It has been invaded before then, going back 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, all the way to 2014 and before. There were threats by Russia to invade Ukraine. Many people are saying that President Putin decided to invade Ukraine just because he has imperialistic aspirations similar to Napoleon or Hitler that want to expand their land, and he wants to go back to the Soviet Union days where they take back all the land they want to build it again. That's the story. But in reality, it's a different one. And many people may disagree with me on this, whether liberals or conservatives, Republicans or Democrats or independents. Russia was never intending to invade Ukraine. Their hand was forced partly because of NATO and European nations and the United States trying to entice Ukraine to become part of NATO. And this argument has been argued as a warning by well-known political experts in foreign policy like John Mishmeyer or Jeffrey Sachs, another well-known political expert in foreign affairs. You can Google their names and you can find out what they have to say about this. Ukraine was invaded because Russia did not want a neighboring nation belonging to NATO. Russia has been ostracized from becoming part of NATO for obvious reasons, which is the attitude and the behavior that President Putin has had since he was, I believe it was president, then prime minister, and then he became president again. And where he has antagonized many people in Europe with his behavior, with actions that we have heard about him killing political dissidents or critics via poisoned or imprisonment or in rare circumstances that people don't really understand. So it's very clear that President Putin is a dictator, an authoritarian figure trying to control Russia to make it what he wants it to be, working along with oligarchs in Russia. But aside that, and this is something that Professor Mearsheimer said about Russia. They said they would not invade Russia. And he said this back in 2012, and even after that, he gave warnings. Russia does not want to invade Ukraine. What they don't want is, they don't want Ukraine becoming part of NATO. And that was the main reason why Ukraine was invaded now. Because the American government, through Bush, Obama, and some of it Trump in a minor way, and then Biden, trying to keep that dream alive of Ukraine becoming part of NATO. And Professor Mishheimer gave a good example. He says, what if China was to ask Canada or Mexico, if they can have military bases in their land right next to the USA, the government of the United States will not like that at all. And that's what's happened now with Ukraine being courted to be part of NATO. NATO is that association of several European countries, along with the USA, to stand up for each other. And some Nordic nations have joined them already, same as Poland, I believe. And Poland is one country, along with Hungary, that at some point were part of the Eastern Bloc, but they have become maybe involved with NATO in many aspects. And Russia did not like that at all. But now, with Ukraine being next to Russia, right next door, and you want to have associations with NATO and have NATO forces and US forces in Ukraine next to Russia, that is an existential threat for Russia, as Vladimir Putin put it once or several times. And again, yes, Putin is a dictator, he's an authoritarian, he's had critics and people that are opposed to his rule of law imprisoned or killed. But by trying to push Ukraine to be part of Russia, part of NATO, that has created a bigger problem, and people don't seem to realize it. And Professor Jeffrey Sachs, he even made a comparison with Israel and Palestine, where he said USA has stood by Israel the whole time, invading Palestine and killing Palestinian people with no regard for innocent lives dying in Palestine. And that is very wrong. But in this case, where we have another scenario where the US is backing Ukraine at the criticism of many Americans, at the same time you get those same Americans backing Israel. Why put money into Israel without conditions, because they have a right to exist, but they're really murdering and slaughtering a whole group of people? And Ukraine is being criticized for receiving funds. And something that needs to be addressed is the behavior that the president of the United States and the vice president had in the office where they're holding the event today with President Zelensky. They were bullying him, they were putting him down, they were humiliating him. And when he corrected Vice President Vance about his knowledge on Russian and Ukraine history, Vance got all of a sudden bothered by it, and he started to try to put down Zelensky when he spoke the truth. And Trump didn't like that either, how he put him on the spot as well, letting him know that the whole time the invasion of Ukraine, which has been going on since 2012, 2014, with threats and incursions in their land, killing Ukrainian people, has been going on nonstop. It just became a war in 2022, but it's been going on before that, under Biden, under Trump, under Obama. And again, because they were courting them to be part of NATO. If they hadn't done that, Putin would have never tried to invade Ukraine. And today's behavior in the White House by Trump and Vance, trying to put down and humiliate Zelensky, that was not acceptable. And I was glad to see him stand up for himself and say, hey, you're wrong, you are lying, this is the way it is. And he simply did not bend the knee to them. And that's why they're so upset. And now you're getting all those politicians, MAGA politicians, who are now criticizing Zelensky for standing up for himself. And in case you missed it, there's a part of the press conference that was happening at the Oval Office, if that's the right place where it was taking the event. There was someone questioning, one of the MAGA scumbags in the White House. He was questioning as to why President Zelensky was not wearing a suit. A man fighting for his country, where people are being killed, his land is being invaded, and this person, I mean, I'm going to call him a moron. I'm sorry. Questioning him because he's not wearing a suit in the White House. That is so petty and materialistic and low. And again, this video shows that I'm going both ways. Yes, Ukraine might have to settle at some point, but some of the things that Ukraine needs to settle on is they cannot accept defeat and let Russia take the land they have taken. Russia needs to give back the land they have taken from Ukraine. That is one principle that needs to stand. And on the other end, which Zelensky already said it, they vow not to ever join NATO and stay neutral apart from NATO, USA, and from Russia. Be independent, next door neighbor, sort of like we are doing with Canada, with next door neighbors, but now USA and Trump is antagonizing Canada. So we can do a little parallel there. Ukraine antagonized Russia by trying to flirt with NATO proposals. So please keep that in mind. And something that I believe Kissinger said once. He said something along the lines, which I'm paraphrasing Professor Sachs. It is dangerous to be an enemy of the United States, but it is fatal to be a friend of the United States, especially with Trump in power now. You don't know if he stands with you or not. He will throw anyone under the bus, not for the USA, but for himself and no one else. Anyway, that's all I have to say for today. Y'all have a good one. Hasta la vista, baby.